So basic lower body anatomy. We're going to cover the muscles in the lower body and we're going to keep it in a way that is nice and concise. We're going to touch on more advanced anatomy in another video. But for now, all I want to show you is the main muscles in the lower body, which is going to include, first off, the quads or the quadriceps. So I'm going to see if I can maybe tense and show that there may be multiple muscles that you'll see built up within the quads. So quad for four. There's four main muscles in this group here. So I'm not going to explain all of them in this video, but one of them is the vastus medialis right here. There's a lot of Latin names for these muscles, but we'll cover them in another video. So you can basically target the quads or the quadriceps in exercises such as leg extensions, where you are seated and you are contracting upwards. You can do them in squats, leg presses, split squat variations. There's a lot of different exercises that will focus on the quads, but we'll talk about that more in another video as well. After that, hamstrings, okay? By the way, this is a bonus tip. Everything you see from the front of the body is the anterior chain. So I mentioned this now because I'm going to turn around and show you the hamstrings, which is at the back. Everything you see on me is the posterior chain, okay? Posterior, obviously, you may know as this region here, but it includes in the chain the whole of the back muscles, okay? So the hamstrings that we see here are made up of a number of muscles as well, but we'll talk about that in more detail in another video. I don't know if you'll be able to see if I've got enough muscle in my hamstring at the minute. Maybe my calf's contracting a bit more, but my body fat might be too high to see, but there's muscles in here and you can target your hamstrings by doing exercises similarly to the leg extension where you'd be seated, but you'd actually contract down and you will feel a contraction at the bottom here. So that would be a seated hamstring curl. You can do a lying down or a pronated hamstring curl, we call it. Movements such as hip hinge movements, so like Romanian deadlifts or stiff leg deadlifts where the legs are going to be straighter, will target and contract the hamstrings a lot more as well, okay? Other variations such as split squat variations with a lengthened stance can help to target the hamstrings and the glutes a bit more too, and they'll bias that area instead of the quads. But we'll touch more of that in an advanced video. After the quads and the hamstrings, we will look at the glutes. So some of you will have heard of the gluteus maximus. There's also the gluteus minimus and the gluteus medius, but we'll talk about that in another video, okay? So the glutes, we can contract and work the glutes through exercises such as hip thrusts, glute bridges, again, split squat variations. There's a lot more in that too, okay? One of the biggest, if not I think it's the biggest muscle group in the whole of the body as well, is the glutes. After that, again, as well in the posterior chain, I'm going to show you the calves. So I'm going to stand forward so hopefully you can see enough. And as I stand up on my tiptoes, you can see that the calves contract, which are also made up of the gastrocnemius and the soleus, as those Latin names are there, okay? As you can see, I can do a standing calf raise, you can do a seated calf raise and other sorts of variations where your heels and your toes turn in opposite directions, or heels in. Potentially can contract a little bit of the inner calves, whereas if you are more straight on or turn outwards the opposite way around, you can potentially contract the outer of the calf as well. That's up for debate and research. But in my experience, there is a little bit more of a bias towards those areas when you change foot position as well, okay? So it's important to obviously look at those muscles as the basics. There are the hips as well, okay? And they can be targeted through a lot of those movements that we mentioned, through squats, definitely through lunges. You'll target the hip flexors in particular as well, split squat variations, but we'll talk about that in more detail in another video, okay? Last thing to add on to this is, depending on who you are, some people regard the abdominals as an upper body position, or in this case, we're just going to put them into the lower body video today, okay? It's up for debate. It's up to you for where you want to class them as, but basically you'll have the abdominal muscles here, okay? They can be targeted through, as you know, like sit-ups and crunches, ab crunch machines in that plane of motion, which is straight down, okay, to target down here. And also along the side, there is the internal and external obliques, which link to the serratus, which is called the boxer's muscle. We'll talk about that in another video once again. So keeping it as basic as possible. And they are more for rotational movements as well, such as golf swings with cables, or you can call them cable wood chops, where you're going from high to low, or you're going from low to high, or you can even do them horizontally. There's machines that will target them as well for moving in that plane of motion sideways. And there's also movements that you can do on the floor, such as Russian twists or bicycle crunches. All of those movements are really going to target both abdominals and obliques too. So I hope that was informative for the basic lower body video. I'll see you in the next one.